Me again, Pat Windrow at the Cable Easel, doing a still life this time, part 2 of a study which I kind of whimsically entitled Birthday Present. And I brought in this setup of some very intriguing piece of subject matter, and which is of course also very simple, very common, very well known to everybody, and I'm turning it into a painting. This is part 2. Obviously, when you see what I have got in front of me, you'll realize that part 1 was done at another time, and that this taping is now going to be the completion of this particular project. I'm putting the background in. It is going to be perfectly plain, and I'm not going to go all the way because I think that I'm going to turn this into what I call a small, charming picture. Small paintings have a lot going for them. In our lives today, there is more room in a house for small pictures than for great big ones, and also they take a little bit less time to do, although that's not entirely always true. Many times the small ones are more complex and more difficult, and they do take a little bit longer. But for the most part, the framing is less difficult, and the placement of them is also easier to go with. So so I'm working on a canvas which is much larger, and I think that you'll see that the photographed subject matter is my reference material, and I'm now going to graduate and turn my brush over to this chocolate eclair. It suffered a little bit in transportation. The whipped cream was much more, it was much more formed, and it had a few less blemishes, and the little cherry stem kind of got, screwed up in the transportation, but nevertheless, it's there, and I can always change the fact that this little stem's got a bend in it. I can make it nice and graceful the way it was in the counter. These are, of course, locally bought items, to be specific, just down the street from the studio at the Hopog Bakery, which, if you may recall, if you came to the Art for Open Lands, you'll remember that cake with a palette and my hand painting and the Cable Easel written on it came from there, and this is a sort of a general recognition that that's one of the more charming places to buy your pastries around anywhere. I'm mixing up some chocolate color. It is alizarin crimson, a touch of ivory black, and a little dab of ochre. A yellow ochre, and if that works, fine. If it doesn't, I shall have to go back and see what is missing. I think that this is okay. It's very much a question of what the shadows and what the highlights do on this. But this is really actually what you might just call a great brown blob. The thing that is going to take the time with this particular piece is the trying to make you, to fool you into believing that this is whipped cream up here. It's very subtle colors. There's nothing really going for it that is going to do anything but just the selection of the very subtle change of the whites, and there are no highlights to depend upon, so that is liable to be something of a problem. If it's a problem, we'll still try and have some fun with it. But the selection of this was amusing, because I said to the lady in the bakery, these are not for eating, these are for painting, and she had a sort of a perplexed look on her face. I did not bother to go in to explain to her what I was doing. I just allowed her to be say, well, there are some running around loose all over the place. And so these are pieces that are for painting, and I selected them for that reason. This one had a particularly large blob of the whipped cream on top of it. And so here are the kind of questionable highlights that there are on this chocolate thing. They are, well, they're sort of nebulous. You really can't make out what they are. So I'm going to do the best. And I could not invent this. I could not memorize it. I have to use my reference material absolutely to a T, because there's no way of memorizing this kind of stuff. And so if people think they can just sit down and paint something like this, they will find that they'll be totally lost, and it's actually easier to do it from life. The camera work here in the control room is one of the things that makes this sort of a unique program, that you can go from the actual still life to my painting in just exactly about the same size, and that's all due to the director, whose name is Peter, and he's quite remarkable when he can do all this. It's not easy, but I just thought I had to point out that when you see this dissolve into the painting, that it's a very specialized technique that we're doing here, and I don't believe that it's being done anywhere else in the country on any of these art programs. So I dearly love to be able to point out that we are doing something which you can't find anywhere else, and that's what this is all about. To be original and to produce something which not only amazes but also instructs. And with this election going on, education seems to be one of the things that everybody is after, so we're trying a very minor contribution to the business of education, as well as possibly trying to intrigue people with what's happening here. There I believe that if you're watching very closely, you will see those dissolves, and I must say, I'm far more interested in what's happening there in the control room with those dissolves than I am sitting here doing it, but I think I will see this through to the end. And once again, Peter Kohler is the fellow who is really doing a remarkable job there. You see these other programs about who is doing this and who is doing that. Johnny Carson kept giving sort of all sorts of credits to the people who were doing his program, and I think that that's absolutely called for with the business of what is happening behind the scenes, not just the person who is doing this little project, but who is how it all happens to come across to the audience. And there you have it. Now, while I was doing that, a maraschino cherry that I detest. I hate those things, and I throw them out instantly, but they certainly make for decoration, and they're going to make for the challenge of trying to make this come off. Is that a shiny cherry, or isn't it? I think it probably is. There you have it, two of them, because we got so many lights. Well, I'm going to subdue this second one. That's just too much. It looks like a pair of headlights on a toy car. Okay, never mind. I rinsed the red off my brush. Hopefully it'll all come off. And now I'm going to keep tackling the whipped cream. I'm using white right out of the tube. I have not yet mixed up the color that I'm going to use to put the shadows and the folds in this particular, and I'm going to put the paint on rather thick so that it has also a tactile feeling about it, that the paint is thick and so is the subject that I'm painting. So as you can see, putting it on, it almost looks like the real thing there with that nice close-up. So here's that strange little pointed blob that comes down. I noticed that there is a little bit of yellow in that, which means that this whipped cream is going to be very happy when it either meets the refrigerator in a little while, or if it meets somebody's indulgence, I think you might say, because when whipped cream starts to turn yellow, you know that it's screaming for the icebox. It needs help. So we'll go back. We'll do this as quickly as possible, because I have full intention of biting into this when the show is over. Maybe not on camera, but you can rest assured that I will certainly pay myself the reward of having gone through this with that thing by, ingesting such a seductive little piece of something. All right, there is the base color of the whipped cream. I suppose a touch of ochre in what my prepared gray background is might do the shading, and I noticed that I'm going to reduce it to a very simple thing and see if it comes across. I don't want to make it too complicated. It's first of all, it's no fun, and secondly, it may not work. Okay, that color looks like it might be all right. So there is a swirl here. I know how this whipped cream is put on here. It's put on by the thing that goes, it comes out of a can, and it's certainly not put on by hand, and so it's quite regular. And this is casting a shadow of itself. Oh, well, okay. You're all very indulgent, and I'm sure that people are going to say, I'm not going to bother to paint whipped cream, the heck with it. But that's the project for the time. I said earlier in the show number 1 that if this is not enough, as in the way of a compositional arrangement, that I can construct it and add something to it. I'm going to sit back as soon as I finish this and see whether or not me, as the person that is producing this thing, can, I don't mean painting this picture, will in fact be able to find that it needs something more. If it does need something more, I have a plan to put something in the center here, more than likely a flower, and just as an addition to the composition. I think that if you can leave your mind open enough to be able to add when something is needed, that is part of the process of learning how to be a creative painter. If you see that there's something missing, you add it. As I said earlier also in the other program, that does not apply to landscape painting. Landscape painting is what you see when you are out there observing the place in which you are. And it's all actually quite intriguing to be able to pull that off wherever you are, to make that a recognizable spot. What I'm doing here, of course, is to try and make you convinced that what I'm doing is what it is. Well, fortunately, there are sprinkles in there. I think there's a little bit of a shadow underneath here. But the sprinkles, we now use a trusty sprinkle brush. And that's going to be the same chocolate color that I mixed, which, if I must repeat it, is the alizarin crimson, a touch of yellow ochre, and some black. And they're little sort of, they're just little dots on here. This may be the saving grace for this thing. This may be, and they are of a particular shape. They're not dots, they're long, they're elongated, little chocolate bits. Part of the business of observing what I'm painting. This can actually turn out to be rather fun, because when you see something materialize, I hope that it's as interesting for you watching the program as it is for me to see it materialize as what it is. It's a sort of an outrageously silly idea to paint this, except that I think that there's a lesson to be learned about form, color, selection of material, and the business of building a painting to something which wasn't there, obviously, before. And it answers the question, people who ask me, how do you get ideas for painting? And I think that I've tried to mention that that's all purely what is in my mind, and what interests me, maybe what interests me about this, will be of absolutely no concern to anybody else. Either that, or it will awaken some interest in people to go out and compose their own things. The originality with which one must tap into the originality of thought as well as the originality of technique. Technique is one thing. The longest thing that it takes me to do is to think about what to paint. Painting it is no problem for me at this point because of my years at this. The thing that takes the time is the subject matter, selecting the subject matter. Well, I'm graduating now into the pastry part, which is a very pale yellow ochre and white right out of the tube. No subduing of color, but here is this is the thing that will make me think that maybe I have pulled this off, and there's a very short time left, unfortunately. I don't know, I think that's to the break, or that's to the break. So I'm going to break in a little bit because I'm glad to see that I'll be able to talk about what I've been yammering to you about constructing something about this if I'm not completely satisfied with the composition. So in a few moments I'm going to take that break, and you must promise not to go too far away so that we can resolve what I have started out to do here. Good. So this is it. Let's take the break as long as I've introduced it that cleverly, and I'll see you in a little while. Don't go too far away. are back again. During that break, I took the opportunity of preparing the background for the stem of this little maraschino cherry, and that is, of course, not especially an interesting event. So I thought that I would do it while we were doing the break. And here, naturally, now I'm going to have to make the cherry a little bit rounder. It lost its roundness when the background went in, and that is done with some pure alizarin crimson. And let me put the stem in. I'm going to use the same brush that I used for the sprinkles. The stem is no longer a green stem, which is what it was at one time. It has, because it's been treated. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it the nice, graceful stem that it was when it was lying pristinely in the counter at the bakery. I'm not going to give it its little break because that broke in the box. But that would seem to me that it's all that would be needed. This you don't have to make a big deal about this little stem. It is just it's just another eye-catching device in a composition which is really full of them. I think there are some sprinkles on top of the cherry, but I'm not going to put them on there because they look terrible. Well, one. Okay, I'll give in. Here is the pastry underneath. The pastry underneath has split in the oven as it was baking, and it caused this little sort of looks like a little San Andreas fault underneath here. And I think that you'll kind of agree that if I put it in there, it's even more believable that this is what it is. Just a small detail, something to look for, something to be aware of as you're working from life. And believe me, the things that one finds out when you work this way are endlessly interesting and also extremely useful to people who are beginning to paint. I'm taking my pre-mixed gray that I have here and putting a touch of this ultramarine blue in it so that I can run my shadow underneath this piece because it runs rather smoothly along here. Yeah, the pastry flops down and the shadow continues elsewhere. So here we go around the corner. The shadow is behind this whipped cream. Going to give it some contrast so that the white of the whipped cream is going to show up a little bit better. And there is that wonderfully mysterious and quite surprising shadow of the stem of the cherry. Let's see if that works out. Using the same color, oops, got to get the brush clean. Using the same color, I'm going to put the shadow of the cherry in. There it is, right in front of me. Okay, works. It works. Yeah, it's sort of really neat to be able to pull these things off like that. This is part of the shadow also. Now, here we have the composition that you have seen set up in front of you. The question now is this interesting? Is the composition any good? Is the general layout okay? Well, it's what I have called at other times during the painting of some of these still lifes, it's called a parade picture. It's two things next to one another. So in order, if one is happy with that, and if I had a frame this shape, then I would say, okay, it's done. I don't need to add anything. But supposing I think that maybe it needs a little bit of a interest in the background here. I think that I can introduce, therefore, a flower of some sort. It would be logical to have that as part of what you might call this birthday present. Cakes and flowers are certainly appropriate. So if I were to put a mysterious flower either in the background or lay it down on the table in the foreground, I think I'll do that now. And I love this, I like the tone of this argyratum that I have here. It may be a little bit complex, but I'm going to try it, and I'm going to just lay it down. You probably may not see this, but I'm going to work from it because we have what is called a frozen take on this still life that was shot before. But I'm going to put this here in the background and see whether or not it helps it a little bit. I think it probably will help it somewhat to introduce that little mauve tone here. The other camera can probably pick it up if you're actually itching to do that. But I think that it's probably going to help to just to have a suggestion of those flowers back there. The reason that this show is not the easiest show in the world to do is because I do sometimes improvise as I go along, and preparation that's taken place ahead of time sometimes gets a little bit lost in the shuffle. However, the crew accommodates very nicely, and there you have it. You see it on your screen. The green has given another dimension to it besides the green from the strawberries. And so this is what makes the business of doing this show quite interesting. That I'm going to do a number of lessons as I go along here. That the lesson is that you can in fact change or add. It's within your power to do the changing and the adding as time goes by to help the painting or to make the composition more interesting. Here is the introduction of some flowers, little argyrodums. They may not be totally comprehensible, and they can also be very, very loosely interpreted as I go along. The need for something more, and I think also probably the need to put some darker tone behind this pale whipped cream is going to help it to stand out even a little bit more. So I use all of these devices to give some more depth to these compositions. Composition is something which is not dealt with very much in these painting programs, I'm afraid. It's a taboo subject. People don't like to fool with the idea of composition because maybe it tends to be boring. I don't think it's boring. I think that when you finally end it, you say, what makes the picture good? And somebody will say, well, I like the way it's all arranged. The word composition may not come into it, but arrangements of things. We all know that when flowers are bought, they're very beautiful, but they are enhanced by beautiful arrangements. And that's all you're doing here. You are arranging a subject matter. I have, okay, good. I have a signal that we've got a little bit of time left, not too much, but I'm going to be using some pure white. And I squirted some of this absolutely, well, that didn't come out right. I have to mix my own purple because the stuff that I squirted out certainly was not purple, it was black. So I'm going to use some alizarin crimson and some cobalt blue and see if I can get some nice argyrodum purple. Or mauve or violet, and I think I have it. So cobalt blue is a wonderful color to work with, and it does miraculous things with. Here's my little puddle of purple up here. I'm using an old canvas board as a palette. Anything will do as a palette. There is no need to go out and buy $60 worth of mahogany palettes. It's a fool's errand. They get covered with paint, and it costs too much money, and the heck with it. You may just as well just go ahead and use what you have at hand. Here is the mauve, which I find is very helpful to this general color scheme, and I think that all in all the intrigue about that I tried to point out about adding another color puts a different, I hate the word dimension, puts a different scheme on things here. And here I just made a little bit of dark. The argyrodum is a selection of just sort of amorphous little purple patterns. Well, I have now the business of filling in the background, tiresome and boring as it may be. It has to be done, and it isn't done with a 4-inch house painting brush with which you would paint the bathroom. It's done with a number 4 square cut bristle brush in little deliberate strokes. All of these things, and you have to get close to it. And prepared backgrounds are okay, but they don't give you the spontaneity nor what is happening here as I'm putting this background in, that this is all very deliberately done. I put the shadow in. Maybe it's a little bit backwards because for the sake of the show, I need to be able to do things on the spur of the moment as they occur to me, that shadow had to be in there to illustrate the fact that the shadow is going to anchor these pieces to the ground. The prepared gray background is helping me a good deal on that, and I'm making sure that this background is taking place here because the signature goes down at the corner. Lower right-hand corner seems to be the accepted place. the reason that people usually sign there is that when you find a painting that has been, you know, gone through the mill, as it were, and gotten awfully dirty, and the varnish has gotten dirty, and you have to clean a painting, and you want to find out who did it, you gravitate to the lower right-hand corner, which is where most signatures are. Paintings without signatures, they can be a Picasso. If there is no signature, it has to be attributed to Picasso, but the signature enhances its value even more. The same thing goes for all the classic painters, and whatever you have heard about auctions, you will, if you read about it, you will read that the unsigned paintings bring a great deal less interest and also a great deal less money than the ones that are signed, obviously. I've got a few rather well-known painters in a collection of pictures that I have at home, and fortunately they are all signed. I have one that is not signed, which is attributed to some French painter of the 18th century, but I'm not sure it is, and the Metropolitan won't even tell me if it's Claude Lorrain or not. So here I have it for my own amazement. Underneath this, underneath the eclair, there is a very intense shadow. Time is running out, but I'm going to just put the intense shadow in and let you see how it actually will sit far more comfortably on the ground with this deep shadow underneath it here. It goes clear around it, and it makes for a very dramatic finality to this particular piece. There is some chocolate that has been spilled over onto the eclair, and for the sake of absolute realism, we'll spill the chocolate over here, and there it is down here. Somebody spilled it over, and that's what we. Anyway, let me sign this, and then let me talk to you briefly, as the time will allow, about what I'm going to be doing in the future. A lady called me up on the live show and said that she would like me to show how I refine and or prepare ready for sale paintings that have been done on this show and that are not really quite up to quality to put in a frame. So I'm going to be doing that as per her request. So I want you to know that requests are very seriously taken here, and that they help a great deal in the overall completion of this series of programs. 92 is going to be the date, obviously. This is going to be the election year, and this will tell us that in 400 years from now, that what year? 18, 19, 2092, what? Anyway, the date is an important thing to do. It galvanizes it and gives you a sense of time. Well, there it is. This is a painting which is called Birthday Present. I think that it, in a small classic little frame, it might work very nicely, and I will do such a thing, put it in a little classic frame and bring it in the next time so that you can see it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again at the end of October live on the last Tuesday of October, and then you'll see me during the week on these tape programs. I hope you got something out of it. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.